you go and you single out a group of people in the midst of people with irregular situations, a lot of irregular situations, people who have been in irregular situations even before same-sex relationships were a thing. People have been polygamous for a long time.
Yes, the
So why not focus on polygamous relationships? Which, I mean, they have people having
Here's the difference. Here's the difference. People who are in polygamous relationship are not forcing the church to change its stance. People who are in other irregular situations are not forcing the church to stand. There is a huge, huge push. And again, I have to state this: it's both within the church and without the church. There is a huge push from LGBT groups and all their sponsors on. They have an invested interest on trying to fundamentally change the church's doctrine of marriage. So
they are changing everything, man. They've changed. They are changing everything.
This particular group has a lot of sponsors behind them. They're changing what our children are studying in school. You can look at the education. They're changing what even your child goes to university now. There's a high chance that they'll come out being more woke, because this particular group, they have a huge political influence, they have huge financial influence, they are fundamentally trying to change the entire fabric of the society.
Exactly.
Today we are on the hot topic of the Pope's recent declaration, a declaration from the Vatican about the blessings of couples in same-sex relationship. It's caused a stir on the media, on social media, in WhatsApp group where we are. We've had back and forth with other people who disagree, people who are confused, people who are worried, in fact, for the church. So today we are going to talk about it, and we're going to look at the original document, which is what a lot of people who have opinions of this have not read, and it's hard to find, but we have it here, and then we'll stick to some points, like kind of what spoke to us, and we'll try to give our opinion. Anyways, it's quite a contentious issues. I'm sure you've experienced that in your own little way. So
yeah, definitely. I think most people are still trying to figure out what that means. Blessing, what does it mean to bless, and whether or not it is the church indirectly acknowledging and admitting and accepting same-sex couples and things like that, right? So yeah, definitely have had conversations with people who are not very sure what that means and how it would affect them as Christians of the Catholic faith, right? So yeah, it's definitely an important topic to talk about. Definitely, yeah.
good. So we've read through the original document, which was really hard to find, surprisingly, because I don't know if it's just the popularity of the declaration. First of all, it's important to know that it's a declaration. And my understanding is, and the document states it's a declaration is different from a doctrinal teaching, is different from a liturgical teaching. So it's just more or less a strong opinion, a strong approach, a strong sense of feeling. It's no way a dogma or a doctrine in the Catholic Church. Is that what you got from reading the thingy?
Yeah, definitely. It's not a change in the position of the church. I think the position of the church about marriage has been consistent. It's a union between a man and a woman, and that is what a marriage is. Respect to the dogma, the doctrine of the Catholic Church. I think what the Pope did was acknowledge a trend, acknowledge that something that was new, and acknowledge something that other Christians have been talking about for a while. I think it's just an acknowledgement. Yes, we know that this is something that is important to some people, and as opposed to making a change in the doctrine or the teachings of the church, they have simply made a declaration, which is more like a guidance on something that really hasn't had a position in the church before, right? So they are saying, okay, if something like this comes up, this is how you deal with it. fundamentally changes nothing
Yeah.
in the
Mhm.
position of the Catholic Church on what marriage should be or what marriage is. But again, it's some sort of an acknowledgement. And I think that's where people are a little bit worried. They are, the position where you say, when I acknowledge something exists, then now I need to start working through making that thing
Yeah.
something, right? Make it bigger than what I acknowledge today. So acknowledging it today, well, that you might say, oh, it's just an acknowledgement. But what happens in 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years, right? What does that acknowledgement evolve to? And I think that's where people are a little bit worried. Like they say, you extend, and what do people regularly say? Like you give. Sorry, go ahead.
You extend a hand and people want a hug.
Exactly. So that is why people are worried. They're like, okay, when we acknowledge this group of people who are members of the church 100%, who are, committed Catholic Christians, but who see love or love driven people of the same sex, like when you acknowledge their existence and you recognize the need or for them to be acknowledged some sort in church, what happens in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, right? I think that is a serious concern that people are raising.
Yeah.
um
The concern of the slippery slope where,
exactly.
you know, when you open the can of worms, like where do you stop? Where do you draw the boundary? And
Hmm.
it's important for people to put this in context because there is quite a bit going around in churches around the world. In Germany right now, there is the preach of increasing the role of the women in the ministry, so making women
Hmm.
up to have priestly duties, or even the homosexuality. So German bishops, for those who have been following church news recently, the German bishops are also threatening to bless homosexual couples as the sacrament of marriage, which is what the church understands marriage to be, between man and woman, designed for the production of children.
Hmm.
That's the background of all what is going on. In other parts of the world, in Africa too, there's a push of to somehow recognize polygamy and some sort. So there's pressure on the church to make a decision. And like you rightly stated, there are people in the church that have all these irregularities. There are people who are not married in the church. There are people who are in homosexual relationships. There are people who are doing extramarital affairs.
Hmm.
So the church has to deal with this and make it a case that has a pastoral aspect to it, so that and this is what I think the letter was trying to do. It was trying to make people feel loved and not necessarily come across as being judgmental in the first place. To meet people where they are, without judgment and inhibition, but in a way that will also tell them that marriage is really between man and woman, designed for the
Okay.
procreation.
Good.
Yeah. So it's a tricky balance to it's a tricky rope to walk, and you are going to get backlash no matter what you say.
I think again, just to talk about the backlash, I think if you are in a place and you believe that change wouldn't happen, I think you probably delusional, because what we know is that change is something that is definitely, it's a
It's
constant.
constant. Yeah.
Things are definitely changing. Traditions are changing. Things which were okay 10 years, 20, 40 years ago, which our parents and great grandparents did traditionally, are not acceptable today. Yes, there's no official, oh, we are not going to practice this, but people simply just move away from those traditions. The Catholic Church is an institution.
Right.
When change
Yeah.
happens, the church, the authorities need to acknowledge the change,
Right.
right? Again, change has something that has been happening for a long time. First of
This is very dear to people. A lot of people take their faith seriously, so it's and a lot of people feel strongly about certain
all,
issues, which and also the background, like I said earlier, the background of the everything that's in the church in Germany, in Africa, some parts of South America, where, I mean, last year there was the Amazon something that they were also trying to push the female into priesthood so that they can deliver the Eucharist to indigenous people where priests cannot reach. So there's that too. So there's quite a bit, and the church is dealing with a lot. And like you mentioned in the previous life, the church is a living body. It has to grapple with issues of our times and make
Mm-hmm.
statements that
Mm-hmm.
hopefully are faithful to the gospel, are faithful to tradition, are faithful to the deposit of faith. And there are things that we even within the church can argue about. Is a matter of opinion, which is good, which is not good. Well, good. Those are things that we can grapple about. But there are other things that are doctrinal teachings, which have been since the institution of the church and will not change.
Mm-hmm.
Marriage, the sacrament of marriage, is one of those things. It's only between man and woman, open to children. Um, I don't think the church can even attempt to change that. I don't think even the Pope can attempt to change that because it's not even possible to change that. But it's also fair to say that the church has always dealt with issues in the past. There has always been something that came up. It's just that now we have the issue of homosexuality, which is again the issue of our time. But the church has dealt with heretical stance. Was Jesus Christ man or God? The thing
Mm-hmm.
the church had to deal with is Mary. Can you call Mary the mother of God? Those are things that the church had to deal with and come down with, clear answers to. Can you use contraceptions? Those are things that the church has had to deal
And
with for a long time.
and those are those again, like I was mentioning before we went off. Yeah, talk about birth control,
Yeah,
contraceptives. I remember growing up, it used to be a very difficult conversation between Christians and priests and everyone. The church was not, the church of course believed in family planning, but they wanted things to go naturally. Again, the purpose of again with the assumptions that sex was only happening between a man and a
and they,
wife, who people who were legally married and who were able to have kids.
right,
So if you're legally married and the purpose of, again, not the primary purpose, but one of the reasons why you're marrying is to have kids, then birth controls and preservatives wasn't something that the church was very keen to accept, right?
right.
But again, that was something that they had to deal with. Eventually, again, the position of the church did not officially change.
It did
It
not
did
officially change.
not officially change, but the church was able to accept and to adapt itself without necessarily changing the position of the church,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
I think the Catholic Church has gone through a lot over time. And one thing I believe they know is that you either get, with the way things are going, you can get left behind. The church could definitely get left behind. And before you know it, in the next 20, 30 years, the one point, I think the total population of Catholic Christians now is 1.35 billion. And if things like this, if you don't juggle it right, you might lose Christians.
Right.
So the church is fully aware, but I think it's definitely finding a balance, right? Finding a proper balance between, you know what the doctrine, the dogma of the church is, and what the church can tolerate, or what the majority of the Christians can tolerate, because there's a great deal of tolerance needing to happen here.
Yeah.
People need to accept that.
But yeah, there's a great deal of tolerance, but at the same time, accepting that everybody is a child of God and everybody deserves the grace of God, everybody deserves the blessing of the church. I think the crux of the matter is, what is a blessing as is understood by the church. And I think the document does a good job in describing what the blessing is, separating a liturgical rite of a blessing, so the things that the church officially and has over the years done to confer its blessings in an official manner. And I think one of the things that this document did was try to expand the meaning of what a blessing is. And do you have to be perfect to receive a blessing? from the priest? That's another question. So the document, which is a 45-point document, try to separate a liturgical rite, so something like a marriage in the church, something like a confirmation in a church and stuff like that, from, or maybe you just bump into the priest randomly somewhere and ask the priest for a blessing. Can you? Yeah.
This is the tricky part. You as an individual bumping on the priest somewhere and asking for blessing is different. When you and your partner, who are homosexuals, approach a priest and say, "We want you to bless us," do you see that there's a clear difference there? That blessing, a priest executing a blessing like that may imply some sort of a recognition of that union, because again, these are couples.
Yeah, these are couples. Yeah.
Yes. So
Yeah,
what is the priest blessing? Is he
right.
blessing the individuals,
Yeah,
or is he blessing them as a couple, as a union, as a what? I think that the document was intentionally ambiguous. They they
there's a
they,
lot of
they attempt to define, to say what blessing is, but again they contradict themselves as they go in the, as they try explaining. That is what I got, that they attempt to describe, to say exactly what blessing is, and then the is contradictions, and from on top of a contradiction, intentionally to confuse. I think it's intentional to confuse, because if you look at that document, I was reading the document and falling asleep, because it's a heavy document. I don't think any lay ordinary person would fully grasp it, and I think that it was done intentionally for that purpose. The Pope could have simply clarified when he made the initial declaration. He could have simply clarified verbally what the blessing he's talking about was, but he did not. So these people had to sit down and then come up with a 45-point document with
well, and I think you have a legitimate concern, and like a lot of people, you have your grievances are well rooted. And again, another background is the Pope's statement. Who is it to judge? Which are fair statement, but we have to also understand that popes, they come and go, and then popes have their own attributes that they want to be known for. Um, Pope Francis had always wanted to be known as the merciful guy, the guy who is bringing people or reaching out people through the mercy of God, not necessarily reaching them through the first part of reaching them is judgment. His art is bring people in, then try to convert. That's his position. I mean, you can have an argument whether that's the right position or not. That's a fair argument to have, but again, that is Pope Francis' approach to the church as it is nowadays in dealing with the issues of our times. But I'll have to disagree. I think the document was very clear that it should not be mistaken. Blessing people who are in same-sex relationship should not be mistaken for recognizing them as a sacramental marriage. And I'll just read you a piece here. This is point 4. Pope Francis' recent response to the second of 5 questions posed by 2 cardinals offer an opportunity to explore this issue further, especially in its pastoral implications. And what just that statement, what I understand is, can we have a balance where a blessing doesn't necessarily mean an approval, where you are not blessing a union, but you are meeting people or giving them an opportunity that they can actually acknowledge that there's a transcendence, that there's a God, and they can, from that point of weakness, I mean, frankly, that all of us have, still receive a blessing as a way for them to come closer to God. It's a tricky balance, and I totally get the argument against.
let me ask a question again.
Yeah.
General question. Would you bless sorry,
can I just finish reading the point?
Oh yeah, sure, go ahead.
Bring you coming. So it is a matter of avoiding that. It is a matter of avoiding that. This is quotation. Something that is not a marriage is recognized as a marriage. Therefore, rites and prayers that could create confusion between what constitutes a marriage which is, open quotes, exclusive, stable, indissoluble union between man and woman, naturally open to the generation of children, end of quotes. And what contradicts it are inadmissible. This conviction is grounded in the perennial Catholic doctrine of marriage. It is only in this context that sexual relationships find their natural, proper, and full human meaning.
Mhm.
The church's doctrine on this point remains firm. I thought that was a very strong statement to say the church's doctrine on marriage is firm. It doesn't change over time. It doesn't, it's not going to change, no matter the pressure. And granted, there's a lot of pressure from without the church and from within the church. There's a lot of people inside the church. Again, I talked about the German bishops who are trying to bless homosexual marriage and make it as a sacramental marriage. I also talk about even priests who are using this as an opportunity and are pushing it in the media to try to stir the notion that the church is trying to change its position on these sacred teachings. Okay, yeah, Gary.
I definitely think it's a first step. It might not be a
Yeah,
complete change at this time, but it's a first step to change. It's testing the waters. I think the church is very technical, very tactical in what they're trying to do. Now they're trying to test the waters by saying, "Oh yeah, it's a blessing," and then but it's not the sacrament,
yeah,
right? Let's see how the people deal with it.
yeah,
Of course, there's definitely going to be pushback and here and there arguments here and there. Nothing too significant. I don't think any serious resistance would happen.
yeah,
And then after 2 years, of course, that position is going to be improved to something
right,
else. And again, like I said, it's simply it's simply setting the stage for what is bound to happen. Again, like you said, the pressure outside the church is a lot. I was talking to a couple of people and they say, "Oh, this same pressure, then there have been popes before Pope John, before this guy. Why is he the one who's going to bow to these pressures?" But again, um, people's views about the LGBTQs 15, 20 years ago is a lot different. It's come a long way,
yeah,
right? There are laws that are recognizing now. There are laws that recognize relationships between marriages
right,
between same-sex couples, right? So as time passes, society adjusts, and then religion has to follow. I sincerely believe that this is the Catholic Church following the changes that is happening now, particularly with respect to same-sex marriage. And I think people's biggest worry, and they've seen it, is that this is the first step to an eventual um, integration of
yeah,
same-sex marriages into the sacrament of marriage.
yeah, yeah. And that's a fair argument, and I think that's a very good point to raise, and I'm happy people are raising that and people are more cautious about that. Um, and to be fair, people should be concerned. I am concerned about that too. I wouldn't want the church to change its teaching on marriage because it has a fundamental implication around the world. Because the church has always been a force for the majority of the time has been a force of truth, a force of stability in the world, even when a lot of chaos. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, but so I totally accept that as a fair criticism. That this is a slippery slope.
It is a slippery slope.
And
Yes.
again, my fear is a danger that we are only raising the sin of homosexuality as the only sin there is out there. Are we going to have the same problem if a priest bless a guy who's having a extramarital affair, or if a priest bless a guy who's having a guy who's living in fornication, a man or woman who's living in fornication, or if a priest bless a guy who's, anything, fill in the blanks, whatever sin. My my feeling is the reaction might not be the same because
Mhm.
as single out the same sex part, and people are granted same sex, it's a sin and the church should not accept that, but so is extramarital affairs, so is fornication, so is adultery. So are we going to have the same reaction, or are these people supposed to be open to the blessing of the church, not recognizing, with the church recognizing that these things are irregularities? But then we can still bless the other good aspects that these people have. Maybe they are charitable persons. Maybe they are, philanthropists. Maybe they are kind. Maybe they are stuff. They have this sin that the church cannot. I mean, the church doesn't even have a position to bless that. Can we? And I think that's what the document is trying to do, to say people have all these challenges in their life and human beings are complex,
Mhm.
but the church can expand the meaning of what the blessing is, separate a liturgical blessing, which is the church's right,
Mhm.
given passed down by Jesus Christ, but can also say God bless you. I mean, the blessings from the Bible, and God can bless people at different points in time, even people who are insane. I mean, we are all insane in
Exactly.
various.
And
Are we saying that we should not be open to
uh,
blessing? Is that what you say?
and I definitely, I mean, it definitely makes sense. I don't think there's any one of us who can claim, like they said, if you he without sin to throw the first stone. We can't. I don't think anyone can do that,
Right.
because all of us live in sin in one way or the other. But now the thing is, I think some people now have classified or ranked, they've personally
Yes.
ranked sin,
Right.
and they say one sin is graver than the other. So now people are saying that the sin of homosexuality, because again, I think the church still considers same-sex relationships as sinful.
Yeah.
That hasn't changed, right?
That,
So now people have taken upon themselves to rank it and say, okay, you who is sinning this kind of, who is doing this kind of sin, your sin is more serious and
and the
graver
adultery.
than
Right.
me who is merely just
Right.
fornicating. I think people have taken upon themselves to rank sin in different categories. Of course, the man who kills one person and the man who kills 10 people, is it the same? Are they just killers, or do you say, oh, you killed 10, so your sin is a lot more serious? If you go for penance, for example, and your confession is I killed one person, for example, and this is me being extreme, and some other person comes and says I killed 10 people, would they have the same penance? If they don't, then it means you can, but again, who am I to classify sin?
Yeah.
But again, if they don't have the same penance, then it means sins are the sins which are more serious than others, and people are considering that this is a more serious kind of sin than the regular fornication and adultery that people commit, which again the church doesn't accept or
The church,
tolerate any of those sins, right? But again, if you go to church, the priest would certainly bless you.
they will bless you. You get what I mean? And it's a tricky balance, and again, it's part of us to feel a lot of times for people to feel good about themselves too, and feel good about their own sins. But at the end of the day, a sin is still a sin. It's a little bit hypocritical for someone who's adulterous, who's asking for blessing, and then you're pointing to people who are homosexual that they should not. I mean, that's a little bit hypocritical. Again, you cannot go and ask the church to bless your adulterous wedding. That's just a fact of life. The church
Yes.
doesn't have to bless that. Same way the church doesn't have the right to bless a same sex couple.
Mhm.
But can we? Can you just randomly meet a priest
But
and
let me put it this way,
yeah,
Ghana. Since most of the sins that we commit are hidden, unless we tell you that we are sinning,
yeah,
I can deny from now to tomorrow that I've not sinned, and there's no way you can prove that. So a man who is adulterous
right,
doesn't go out and tell the world that they are,
right.
right? Unfortunately, if you are in a same-sex relationship, there's no way you can
There's
hide
no
it.
way you can hide it. Yeah, yeah,
There's no way you can hide it. That is why it might be easy for an adulterous man or woman to go get the blessings that they want. They might even go get the sacrament of communion. They are not telling anybody that they left another woman's house before coming to church that morning.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
you in a same-sex relationship, how do you hide and I think that is why it's so out
Right.
there, because
Right.
There's no way you can hide it unless you say, okay, the one partner goes get the blessing, come back, the other partner goes get the blessing and come back. But if the two of you go and ask for a blessing, then it's visible. Everybody can see what you're doing. And then I think that's what that is what upsets, or that's what frightens people.
Yeah.
Because
No, no, I,
I think the whole thing is just fear. People are worried that this thing that they've believed in for so long, like marriage,
yeah.
the whole concept of marriage,
Right.
which is the base of the church. If you don't mind me saying that,
Me-
people are worried that that base can be changed significantly, right?
No, that's I totally, and I share all those concerns. I really do. I share all those concerns, and I don't want to see the church change its stance on marriage. The sacrament, I think the church should stick to that, and it's a matter of being in the culture, but not necessarily of the culture. Trying to change the culture, but not changing the culture, and the church has to deal with that. The church is part of the culture, but should not be transformed by the culture. Um, what is the
Somebody says, Shafwa says, where will this blessing be done?
right?
Would it be done in church or outside the church?
That's the thing that the document talks about. If you meet the church, if you meet the priest in the airport, people meet priests in the airport and ask for blessings. People meet priests in the hallway and ask for blessings. Also, look at blessings like this. When they are, if you've gone to Catholic mass and the priest is ending a mass and he makes a sign of
It's
cross,
blessing everybody.
Mhm. So are you saying the blessing is not falling on those who are in
Let me give you an example. Ghana. People are renewing their vows.
the church cannot do that for same-sex marriage.
Excuse no, but again, this is the point I'm trying to make. You could meet a priest outside the church
Right.
and do that.
Right.
While you could also do that in the church,
Yeah.
within the mass, right?
Yeah.
But this blessing, the blessing we're talking about, if two people from same-sex people come in front of the altar, in front of the priest, and ask for a blessing, they're not asking for him to acknowledge that. So I think that is where that question is
Yeah.
coming
Yeah.
from. Would that blessing take place outside the church, or can it take place in the church, in the course of a sermon, in the course of a mass, for example? I think that's where that question is coming from. Are we
Well,
limit? And the document doesn't say. Again, that is why I say the document was intentionally ambiguous. It did not say that we will bless you outside the church. It did not. It doesn't say anything, and then it leaves it to the discretion of the priest,
yeah.
which is a whole conversation that needs to happen. It leaves it to the discretion of the priest. Now you can't hold the church liable or responsible for anything, because they'll say the priest who did that had the discretion. The church did not direct them to do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
They took it upon themselves to do a blessing in the church. Now the church, the authorities can step back and say, we did not approve that. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why they left it so open, they left it so vague, and they left it to the imagination of whoever was reading it. And I think that is what they intentionally did. Take what you want to take from it, do with it what you want to do with it. But don't come back and say this is what we said, because we can deny. We can go to the document and deny that we did not say that.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I think the document stated clearly what a marriage is supposed to be. And if any priest is doing that, and certainly there are bad priests who are doing that. There's already the priest, Father Martins, James Martins. He's a Jesuit priest. He is one of those. He's always on CNN. One of those who has been pushing this homosexual agenda for a long time, as trying for the church to change its stance on that. He has the skin of the game, because I think those are one of the heretical priests that are really trying to change the fundamental teaching. As soon as this document came out, he purposely brought two men together and blessed them.
He did.
Those are men who are evil, who are trying to fundamentally change church teaching. And again, a document like this will have people like that who will take it and run with it and do exactly what the document was not intended to do.
The point is, who can say what the document is intended to do? Because the document isn't exactly clear. And that's why this priest can go ahead and do what he's doing, because he can go back and get justification. It is at my discretion. The priest has a discretion to do it.
Well, are you saying the priest doesn't know that a marriage is supposed to be between a man and a woman? open for children. That is theology 101. Come on, you don't need to go to preschool to be able to understand that the church has always thought that marriage is between man and woman. This man has a clear motive that he is trying to push. He has a clear agenda that he is trying to push. And he, if you watch any segment of his on CNN, he has to push all this homosexuality thing for the long time. Frankly, he looks like a homosexual himself. He's been trying to push this for a long time. You know what I mean? And he takes
but I think
the
Ghana,
document.
my problem is the church is, I believe the church is fully aware that there are priests who are probably in favor of same-sex relationships or couples. Right. Now, the church comes out with a document that isn't exactly clear, with a document that allows people like that to take advantage of some of the loopholes. I believe that the church is fully aware. So do you blame a priest who takes advantage of a loophole that you've created?
Of course.
Because these loopholes are created intentionally.
Of course I blame the priest.
No, do you blame the church? I'm not talking about the priest. The priest is only acting upon the space that the church has created for him, right? So do you blame the priest, or do you blame the authorities of the church for creating a space where a priest like that can go ahead and do what he's doing?
Well, okay, let me read this and then tell me what is not clear about this.
Okay.
So therefore, rites and prayers could create confusion between what constitutes a marriage, which is, this is what constitutes a marriage: exclusive, stable, indissoluble union between man and woman, naturally open to the generation of children, and contradicts it at inadmissible. Is there anything about that statement that's ambiguous? Is there anything about exclusive, stable, indissoluble union between a man and a woman, naturally open to the generation of children? Should any priest read this line and then think that this somehow means that you can bless a same-sex marriage? My point is, if you read that and you somehow interpret it that is the church accepting homosexual relationship, you are pushing an agenda. And I'm sorry, you are not supposed to be a priest, because that is very clear what marriage is supposed to be about. That is what a sacramental marriage is. And if you, sorry, am I still muted?
No, I can hear you.
Yeah. And if you read such a statement and then think for a second that somehow means that the church has changed its stand on marriage, you should not even be a priest, because that is church teaching 101.
Okay, let me read something.
Right.
So again, just in line with the portion that you read, right? Yeah. Let me read something and you tell me what you think about. Yeah. The church moreover must not shy away from resting its pastoral praxis on the fixed nature of certain doctrinal or disciplinary scheme, especially when they lead to a narcissistic and authoritarian elitism.
Right.
That is whereby instead of evangelizing, one analyzes and classifies.
What number?
Sorry?
What number is that?
25. 25. Okay. Yeah. And again, I think the key thing is the first statement. I think that is one of the things that I say the church now contradicts itself.
Right.
Okay.
Part of this is also understanding that this document was trying to expand the understanding of a blessing. Again, like I said earlier, separating a liturgical blessing, which is what happens in a sacramental marriage, from the blessing that people just receive, right? So
why do you think it was important for the Pope to make an official statement about that? And why do you think it was important for there to be a follow-up document to support that? You think the church did not anticipate the church? I mean, at this point, the church did not believe that the Christians knew what the blessing was.
Well, part of this document was to expand the meaning of the blessing. And
I'm saying that the initial statement by the Pope, was there a point to come out and make a statement like that? If you did not think that there were contradictions.
Well, these are things
Because
that,
again, blessings, the priests have been giving out blessings. I mean, there was really no point to come out and pick a specific group of people and say it's okay to bless them. They were already being blessed in the church, in sermons. If they came to the priest for a blessing, the priest would do it.
yeah,
The
no,
Pope did not need to come out and make an official statement unless they were aware. Unless they were aware that the word they could manipulate the word blessing, because blessing is blessing. We all know what it means. Blessing is not marriage. This document is not enlightening us in any way, because we know that blessings are not sacraments, right?
no.
But he came out and he made
Well,
his statement about blessing, and then they came out with a follow-up document. Now they are confusing us now to what blessing is. They are telling
well, that,
us 1,000 different ways. We already knew what it was.
yeah, that's okay. But if you have for any second followed the papacy of Pope Francis, you will know that this is what is common in his papacy. He, again, because of his approach to me,
I personally think that he's putting his approach. He is thinking about his legacy and not the church. That is what Pope Francis has done since he got in. He is thinking about how would people remember me,
yeah,
not about how would I leave the church. In what state would I leave this church when I'm done? He's putting his selfish interest over the interest of the entire church. I believe sincerely that that is what he's doing. Benedict was a more Benedict was a more traditional pope. He did not really care what people thought about him. He stood with the values and the traditions and the doctrine of the Catholic Church.
yeah. Well, but again, to be clear, this document doesn't change the meaning of marriage.
Wow. It opens up for changes. This is just what I think.
I don't see how anybody can read this document and say the church has changed its meaning of marriage. You can say the church has expanded the meaning of a blessing. That's a fair, and it's a legitimate concern to say that this is a slippery slope that can open up to other things. That's a very fair concern. I share that concern too. But I don't see how someone can read this and automatically say the church has changed that. I don't think that's possible. Also, if you have dealt with anything about the papacy of Francis, you know that he often puts out statements and then the Vatican has to come and clarify, because he is fond of putting out very ambiguous statements that is open to different interpretations. People can take it differently, different ways. But again, that is part of his approach, his way that he's trying to guide the church in a merciful way that is welcoming of everybody. First bringing them in, then trying to change them or trying to meet people where they are in their lives. And frankly, all of us, we are in different parts on our own journey, in our own sinful ways, that we still expect the church to meet us and then help us grow out of our sinful ways and become better persons. And I share the concern that singling out same-sex couple issue, making it just a same-sex issue, it's kind of opening that door.
But see the trick. I keep saying that the whole thing is a I think for me the whole thing is a game. See, I don't remember the number, but a portion of it says the possibility of blessing couples in irregular situations and for couples of the same sex. What is an irregular situation? Who is a couple in an irregular situation? Can you think of one?
Divorced and married, irregular. People who are not married in the church are in regular situation.
People who are polygamous.
People who are polygamous are irregular situation.
Okay.
People who are in relationship are irregular situation.
Okay.
People who are baptized Catholic and are not married in the Catholic Church are in irregular. So there's a bunch of things that what I think
they could have just left it at that. At blessings for people or couples in irregular situations. There was no need to go ahead and say and then now this is how they tell us who they are really interested in. They are not interested in anybody else. Sincerely speaking, because why didn't they could have said people who are in polygamy, they could have been very specific about polygamous relationships. They could have been very specific about people who are divorced. They could have been very specific about, but they did not. They lumped this group of people into one group and said irregular situations. And then they say and then they go now and they carve out this very unique group of people.
Yeah.
Again, that's what I'm saying.
So let me ask you a question. Should the priest be able to bless these people in irregular situations?
If they are blessing everybody else, why not?
But I totally agree. You should just say everybody who's in irregular situation.
Everybody was in an irregular. There was no need to go single out same-sex couples. Yeah. There was no need for that. And I think that is why there's a whole fuss about this thing. If he ended at irregular situations,
right? Yeah,
it would have been a whole different conversation we could have been having now.
That's fair. That's totally fair.
Right? But when you go and you single out a group of people in the midst of people with irregular situations, a lot of irregular situations, people who have been in irregular situations even before same-sex relationships were a thing. People have been polygamous for a long time.
Yes.
So why not focus on polygamous relationships? They have.
Yeah, here's the difference. Here's the difference. People who are in polygamous relationship are not forcing the church to change its stance. People who are in other irregular situations are not forcing the church to stand. There is a huge push. And again, I have to state this, is both within the church and without the church. There is a huge push from LGBT groups and all their sponsors on, they have an invested interest on trying to fundamentally change the church's doctrine of marriage. So
they are changing everything, man. They've changed. They are changing everything.
This particular group has a lot of sponsors behind them. They're changing what our children are studying in school. You can look at the education. They're changing what even your child goes to university now. There's a high chance that they'll come out being more woke, because this particular group, they have a huge political influence, they have huge financial influence, they are fundamentally trying to change the entire fabric of the society.
Exactly.
And they know that because they cannot have children, they have to convince all of us who have children. So I can see the justification of singling out this particular group, because polygamous people are not trying. They know that they're in irregular situation. They are not out there advocating for change, or maybe they don't have the money to. People.
I think let me break that down. I think the reason why polygamy is not a big thing in the church is because it is limited to a group of people who are not that influential. For example, polygamy is not a thing that's big in the West.
Yeah.
In the West, they have all the money, they have all the power, they have all the influence, they have all the control. So it's nothing. No Westerner, no Western country, no Western. They are not interested in your polygamous situations back home in Cameroon and in Africa. Yeah. Africa does not have the same. They don't have the same influence or pressure in terms of saying this is something that we do and the church should start respecting it. And maybe that's something that they should do.
But do you really think this needs money and power? It just needs a few bishops. It just needs a few bishops from Africa telling the church, you know what, this is our new understanding of marriage. You guys have to change. Because that's exactly what the German bishops are doing. That this is our new understanding of marriage. You cannot marry man and man. So the church in its entirety has to change its relationship.
So I think maybe the Christians, the Christians in Africa who form a substantial number of Christians.
Well, the point is, in Africa, we are not influenced by woke agenda like the West is.
Maybe we should start doing, or else we get left our own agenda. Nobody's out here talking about what matters to the African man or the African family or the African woman.
No.
Right? They don't care about the fact that we say a family is what we consider a composition of a family. They don't care.
No, because I think we are still holding strong to truth in Africa the way that the West is crumbling in front of us, and we are saying it. It's crumbling, because if you cannot tell the difference between a man and a woman, I'm sorry, your society is crumbling. If you cannot tell the difference between marriage between man and woman, I'm sorry, your society is crumbling. If you think that gender is fluid, that's sign of a declining society.
Okay.
So real time, we are seeing the West decline because they do not have any values that they can hold up to. Africa is not that same way. Africa still has some strong values, some strong core values that they are holding up to. So I think that's keeping Africa. We can be poor, but we values that we hold dearly and
And
strong to.
this is what the mission is. They know very well that Africa's weakness is religion, is the church.
It's not necessarily weakness, it's strength.
It is. Let me explain why I think it's a weakness. It's the church, in the sense that they've tried multiple ways to push the same-sex relationship agenda in Africa, and they have failed. They have tried sanction. They have sanctioned countries. They've stopped. They've stopped their guns.
Do you know it's
they have
bishops that are pushing against this thing?
It is African bishops who are pushing again. But again, once the bishops here and the church, once Vatican approves, those bishops have no other option but to approve.
No.
And then the only way they get now to the people is through them. And I think this is the agenda that they're following. We've tried every other way. We have been unsuccessful. So now what we're going to do is we are going to come bring this agenda to you through the church, and we will see how you will not take it. I think that is the agenda.
I think religion is both a blessing and
it's a curse, man. It's been a curse. It was a blessing a while ago. To me, it is just a curse. It's a way they figure out the best way to subdue and to subjugate the African person. That is my opinion. That's what I think. How is it a blessing? How is it a blessing, Ghana?
I think
without the church, we will still be valuing our traditional marriages, where it's a woman and a man and children. We will still value that.
Come on now. Come on, Asong. We know in Africa, people who are married and still have concubines. People who, so you can't say the church has done a lot to change marriage in Africa. So, and
they've made it better, you think?
Well, they've just made it aligned to church. How many of our parents or our grandparents were polygamous? Is polygamy still that common nowadays?
Is it a bad thing to be polygamous? That is the question I want to ask. Is it a bad thing to have multiple wives and many kids, many children? The purpose of us being here is to what? The Bible says what? Go and multiply. How do you multiply with one woman?
So when you make an argument like that, how are you different from the demon bishops who are trying to push homosexuality? No. You're basically arguing the same thing.
No.
You are trying to change the fundamental meaning of marriage in the church. You're just doing it a different way. I
am saying that with that, it's the religion that told us that marriage has to be between one man and one woman. We knew that marriages had to be between a man and multiple women. There's not a whole lot. The only distinction is the number of women that the man has, right? It's the same value, man, woman, and kids. Right. It could be one woman, but it could be multiple women, but kids. It's not a whole lot different. So they brought that, and then of course they trimmed it down to one woman because that is what worked for them.
Okay. So, point one, you agree that the church has always thought that marriage is between one man and one woman. True?
That's what they say, yes.
Well, what do you mean by that's what they say? Is that what the Bible teaches or not?
If we're talking about the Bible, then that's a whole different conversation we're going to have.
The church is there to propagate the Bible.
The church is not propagating how is it propagating the Bible? See, listen. Again, in terms of marriage, is there again, you correct me if you can correct me if I'm wrong. What portion in the New Testament says one man, one woman, that's what marriage is?
Man shall leave his father and mother and cling to a wife, not wives, a wife. That's marriage. And then what God has joined together, let no man put asunder. So there's nowhere in the Bible where the church, the Bible talks about there were people who had multiple wives. There was also the parable of the man the person asking God, the man who had multiple wives, the first one.
Yeah, when I die, what happens to
So I think the argument you're making, it's It's not different from the argument that the German bishops are making. You two are trying to fundamentally change the definition of marriage. If you want to change you're also trying to change the church's teaching. If you want to include polygamous marriage, those arguments are the same. You cannot, at one hand, point at the German bishop and saying they're trying to change it because they're trying to force husband and man and man, and then you look at the African man and then not say he's trying to change it if he's want to force a polygamous. All those things are the same.
I'm saying
they are both
that if change needs to happen, maybe that's where we should start.
My point is change should not happen. The church, I mean, change can happen, but the church to stick to what it has always taught. Marriage is between man and woman. Nobody should try to change it. Not the German bishops and not the African polygamists too to try to change it. That's my point.
I guess we 100% differ. To me, what I say is change is coming, and it's definitely going to happen. There is going to be a point where the definition of marriage as per the church is going to change.
So, are you in favor of the change or not?
I'm saying that if it could change in favor of a same-sex relationship, it should equally be changing in favor of polygamous relationships. If we want to accept, if we say we should accept a same-sex relationship, let's just go ahead and accept polygamous relationships as well.
The church hasn't accepted the same-sex relationship. The church has not, and we can't say the church has. Until that point where the church accepts it, then you can make that statement. I don't think it's the first statement to make. This is just a political push that people are trying to make. And to be fair, it's also a political push that you're trying to make there, that the church should accept the polygamous relationship.
If you open the door, like I said, it's the floodgates. If you open the door for one thing, what is good for the goose is good for the gander. It's definitely, if you're opening the door to same-sex relationship, be ready to open the door to polygamous relationships as well.
That's a fair point. And that's a totally fair point.
Exactly.
And I'm on board on that. That's why I don't want the church to open it to the homosexual.
So your position is close the door, leave it as it is, status quo. That's what you're saying. Status quo is what we want. One man, one woman, children.
No, my point is the church should stick to what it has always taught. The church should stick to the gospel, which has always taught marriage is one man and one woman. Marriage in the church is one man and one woman. That's what the church should stick to. You should not cajole the homosexuals who are trying to push it. Neither should you cajole the polygamists who are trying to push it. And I share your concern that if the church opens this, it's a floodgate for a lot of things to come.
Exactly.
The church should stay steadfast in this, because all it takes, if two German cardinals can do it, all it takes is for two African cardinals to say polygamous in line with the church's teachings and in line in the Bible, and we should open that. I don't think not give any of those two propositions any. Yeah, that's my point.
Let's go to the comments. There's an interesting comment. If you want to maybe read Emil, he's been putting again. It's not just him, but I think his is interesting. Maybe we.
My brother Emil. I don't know if he wants to join. He's I don't know if he's okay. So I think that we African men pretend and are not courageous enough to state our stand on polygamy. We always fear what our partners will or think about us, and I think we need some strong advocacy for our culture and tradition.
I agree.
I think that
and the reason why I agree with that point is there's something that we grew up initially. You know, they call it incorporation, masses, where there's a blend of the cultures and the traditions, African cultures and traditions, into the rituals and the practice of the church. That it didn't just happen overnight. People had to stand up and say, hey, if you want us to do this, we need to be able to incorporate our traditions as well, right? So it took a while, but again, eventually it got accepted. So yes, I agree with Emil. We definitely need to, Africans again definitely need to stand up and say, okay, we have our own practices and our own cultures, our own traditions. We want you to start bringing them in.
I don't want us to get lost into the details. What he's specifically talking about polygamy. Inculturation can be the way you sing, the way you process. If you have your peace plans.
But the point I'm saying, initially it used to be Latin or plain English songs, and initially there was none of that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's fair. I mean,
Initially,
yeah,
there was none of that, right?
those are all incorporations that we can have
Exactly.
and enjoy when we can sing in a traditional language. But he is specifically talking about polygamy. I think you're purposefully avoiding that. Let's deal. He's specifically talking about polygamy in the church. That's the question of contention. You know, should the church change its stance because Africans recognize polygamy? And by the way, polygamy has been declining in Africa for the long time. You can say it's the influence of the church or not. But should the church change its stance because a lot of people in Africa recognize polygamy? That's a question for you.
Again, my position hasn't changed. If we
What?
are considering, and your position doesn't change as well. But again, like I said, if people are fighting for same-sex relationships, we should start fighting for polygamous relationships.
Yeah.
So that eventually, once they accept one, they accept the other as well.
Right.
Let's not wait.
The church should not succumb to any. Okay.
I think he has other comments if you want to read.
For me, I strongly support polygamy, and most people talk against it, yet have extramarital affairs out of their marriage. So what's the point? Yeah, that's
the conversation, right?
It's hypocritical to condemn polygamy and have extramarital affairs. It's also hypocritical to be polygamous and then try to change the definition of marriage in the church. Those are a hypocritical stand too.
Emil also said, did he ask, okay, can we attempt to define can we attempt a definition of marriage based on Cameroon law? Again, if we go into law, it's a whole different conversation. I think Cameroon law is very clear. A marriage is between a man and multiple wives. Cameroon law acknowledges polygamous and monogamous relationships. Now you have to choose. I think the law allows you to choose which one works for you, and if your partner is okay with that, then you can move ahead. It's not the same kind of conversation that we are having here, where you have options to choose from. The Cameroon law is the law is very clear. Again, Cameroon law too it doesn't just end there. It goes ahead and says same-sex relationships or it's a crime, right?
It's a crime.
It's a crime in Cameroon as well as it's a crime in most African countries, I think. So it's a whole different. The laws haven't been changed at all. The laws are fixed.
So again, we cannot. That's Cameroon law.
We can't Cameroon, go.
It's a sovereign country, has the right to its law according to its people and stuff like that. But Cameroon, Cameroon cannot now say the church should change its own definition of marriage. Legal and moral.
But even if the church eventually changes its definition of marriage and allows same-sex relationship, it still will not happen in Cameroon because it's illegal for that to happen, right?
Yeah, because Cameroon has its own laws.
Exactly.
And it's different from the. Yeah. So this is Emil again. I don't think polygamy is declining. People just have changed the practice to now having multiple partners. Well, legally, polygamy was recognized, right? And I personally, I think polygamy has declined. I don't know, maybe cheating has increased and extramarital affairs has increased, adultery has increased, but the act that a man had multiple wives that was legal and traditionally known, I don't think it's that common, you know.
It's not very common. They're just hosting them somewhere else unofficially.
I mean,
but they are, again, that is true. They might not officially acknowledge the relationships, but they have those relationships, they are hosting women and families all over the place. There's situations where people have died and families have come from different places to come claim the corpse because they were not officially. Again, you could argue both ways. It's in a decline because it's not happening very often. But in hiding, yes.
Yeah, but
people are in.
But if you define polygamy as marriage to multiple women, then
it's not. Of course, it's declining.
Are people having more affairs? Probably.
Of course, yes.
I think that's it for the comment. Show either blessings are open to all. Yeah.
But what kind of blessing? I think that's where we got stuck. Like,
And I think the document clearly states that there's a difference between a liturgical rite, which is a blessing done by church, which has to be ordered to the transcendence. You have to put your life in order for you to get a liturgical blessing in the church. For you to have the sacrament of marriage, you have to make sure you're not married to everyone, to anyone else. You have to make sure you're doing that out of clear conscience. You
mhm.
have to make sure that you are open to life. That is how the church will bless a marriage in church. But can the church bless people on adulterous relationship? The church does that all the time. I mean, every mass the church blesses everybody.
Mhm.
My wife
Um,
has
why don't we talk about the fact that it leaves it at the discretion of the priest? 41 says, what has been said in the declaration regarding the blessing of same-sex couple is sufficient to guide the prudence and the fatherly dis- dis- discernment of ordained ministers in this regard.
yeah.
Thus,
Well,
beyond the guidance provided above, no further response should be expected
from
about possible ways to regulate detail or practicalities regarding blessings or this. Don't you see the ambiguity in
there is
that?
an ambiguity, but again, the life of a priest, his pastoral daily routines has all this ambiguity that he has to mesh through. You know, um, okay, let's say a same-sex a same-sex couple buy a new house. Can they call the priest to come and bless the house? Those are you see that's one example, but those are the little intricacies that you don't need the
Why
Vatican.
why don't you talk about that? Do you call the priest to come
The
bless the
priest
house?
is blessing. I think the priest can bless the house. Is blessing the house. It's not recognizing their marriage, and that is the part of the blessing that this document was trying to expand more on. You know,
And then when we talk about recognition, Ghana, what is again? Let's leave the rituals of the ceremonies of marriage
mm-hmm.
aside,
Yeah,
and let's focus on recognition.
yeah.
What does it mean?
It means that you recognize that that's a valid relationship that is ordered by God. That's what I think recognition means. What do you think it means?
Recognition means
No,
validating.
I'm.
No, it's validating.
I
If
mean,
if 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 if, if the priest says homosexual same sex is a sin,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
How do you turn around, come to the home of a couple, same sex couple, and bless that home? Don't you
So
see the contradiction? Don't you see the contradiction in that?
I know I don't. I don't. And I think it's a tricky line to draw. I don't. I think the priest can bless the house that they bought and not
No,
recognize.
you are blessing the house. Is the house did not just come from space. The house is owned by something.
So,
Is you're called to bless by people. You're not just going around blessing homes without a request.
well,
They're calling you to bless the home. How do you do that?
you're blessing their hard work. You're blessing their sacrifice, financial sacrifice. You're blessing their
Even
need.
though they're living in sin, and you say you two are sinners, but I'll come by and bless the work. I'll come by and bless the product of a sin, because again, technically, that's what that is.
So should the church bless anyone? Everybody's a sinner. So
No, like I said, they single out this group of people, so that's why I'm talking about them.
okay.
They were singled out. It's not me. The church singled out a group of people. So
Yeah,
let's talk about them.
I agree with you. Okay, should the church bless a couple who's not married in the church's home? Should they bless a new house that should the priest bless a new house that they bought?
No.
No. You see,
Yes, because if these people are living in sin, again, like I said, if I can, if I, it is not the kind of sin that you can come to a priest and ask for forgiveness and go back and maybe 2-3 days before you sin again. You're living in it,
yeah.
right? So how do you bless it? Because again, it's a product of sin. How do you bless that?
No, I think you can bless
Do you
because
baptize a child that you get out of wedlock?
yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's not the child's fault.
No, I'm
So
just saying it's done, eh? I don't know. Now this is me asking an ignorant question.
Oh yeah, they do, and that's why it's part of the document, because there were a lot of churches in South America that were refusing to baptize children for women born out of wedlock, even women who had gone to confession. So you can see where having a hard stand on this thing can create a lot of pastoral issues too, because that's no fault of the child that he was born out of wedlock. So are you going to refuse the church's blessing on this child because he was born out of wedlock?
Okay. Okay, let's agree. Child has no fault, did not choose to come, he was born. Now these are two
I was born,
adults who are aware. These are two
but
Christian adults.
the child was born out of sin. I think you're doing the same thing, that you're trying to separate a sin of homosexuality from all other sin. My point is, a sin is a sin, and
But is it Ghana? Is a sin a sin?
a sin
It's not.
a mortal sin is a mortal sin. A
The-
vineyard sin.
what is a mortal sin? And again, now there's a distinction between mortal sin and, so a sin is not just a sin. They're different gravities and intensity of what sin is.
Yeah.
And my argument is, I did not sin, confess, and then move on. I am living in it. Even in my confession, I am living in the sin. As soon as I leave that confession box and go home, as soon as I leave that place, I am still in it. And again, I'm taking at sin as defined by the church, not by me, but by the church. If the church is saying that that kind of relationship is sinful,
Mm-hmm.
then it means if you're in it, you're in sin, it's perpetual sin, right?
Yeah.
So how do we turn around and bless?
Are you saying people in sin should not receive any blessings?
Isn't there a process? Isn't you? What's the purpose of blessing? What's the purpose of that?
That's why the document separated the liturgical blessing from irregular. That's the point.
That's it. Ghana semantics.
It's not semantics.
I agree with you, but I think it's semantics.
No, but that's the point. Going to bless someone's home is not a liturgical right. It's not a liturgical right.
If I steal money and build a house, and everybody knows money was stolen, does a priest come and bless the house?
The priest can come and bless the house.
Isn't that a product of a sin?
But it doesn't mean the churches accepted that theft is not a sin.
But if you're blessing me, if you're blessing something that is a product of a sin, what are you saying? Aren't you acknowledging or validating the sin?
No. Because as some people are complex, human beings are complex. People in sin are charitable. People in sin are loving. People in sin are good people in some other aspects. You know, a person in sin is not just that sin. A person in sin has other good attributes that they have. You know, nobody's without sin. So where do you draw the line? Because
that could be tough.
Human beings are complex. Everybody's in sin, some sort of a sin. You know, life is complex. No one can come out and say they're perfect. So who's qualified to receive a blessing then?
Maybe no one.
So these are pastoral issues that priests have to make judgments on their own. They don't need the Vatican anything.
Okay, then again, priests have to make judgments on their own. And then now we are here talking about the German priest who brings two homosexuals together and gives and blesses them. No. Why is he a problem?
That guy's American.
Oh, American. Why is he a problem? He's not. He shouldn't be a problem because we left it at his discretion.
No, it's yeah, but that's why I say that the pressure is both from within the church and without the church. And you have people of bad faith that would take this thing and then turn it upside down and make it mean what it's not supposed to mean. Yeah.
I think we've been going for an hour, and I don't think anybody. This topic is pretty sensitive.
It is.
And I know people who reached out and say, "Oh yeah, interesting topic," but I'm not going. I would love to come live and make comments, but you know I can't because it's sensitive and people don't want to hurt people's feelings, and people don't want to be cancelled, and people are worried they might risk their employment and things like that, which is 100% understandable. But again, I think what we have done, and hopefully we did it right. What I was hoping that we do is that we have a conversation without castigating a group of people,
right,
or without preaching hate against a group of people. I'm hoping that we were able to walk that line where we could really have a conversation about something without judging, right?
Yeah.
And again, that is a difficult, it's a
It's,
difficult road to walk, right? Where you can have a conversation about something without, again, if you see what's going on in Israel and Palestine, it is hard to have a conversation. Most people find it difficult to have a conversation without really picking sides or
yeah,
without, So I think my hopefully we were able
to do that.
to have this conversation without,
I mean, they can
looking.
have we're here to have it for them. So
Sorry.
yeah, I said we're here to have the conversation for them too.
Yeah, I would have loved other people to chime in and
Yeah.
tell us what they think. But again, yeah, I think we had a few good comments.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay. I think that's
yeah.
it. Bye now.